shipping off to find his wooden leg. That's a fine goal, and it fits in with this week. Welcome. This is the Fright Club Podcast.
I'm Hope Madden.
And I'm George Wolf, and we are from madwolf.com. Check it out for all your new movie reviews. Got some good ones up there now. In fact, a good new one I think we just might be talking about this week.
What?
Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. This week it's all about physical disabilities in horror movies. I don't think we have a wooden leg like mentioned in the song, but we have a gun leg, and that's a major hint. I bet you can guess. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. First of all, we want to say sorry. We got a little snowed under, and we took last week off.
We did.
Forgive us.
Guess whose idea that was?
It was mine. A lot going on, so we took last week off, but we're back, and we're ready, and we're loaded for bear because we've got some good stuff going on, and we look back to, what was it, 2 weeks ago?
It was 2 weeks ago, where we had Martyrs on the big screen.
Oh, man.
And we just want to thank everybody who came out because it was a great crowd. They were very into it. They all got merit badges if they stayed through the film. And I think while it was a harsh film, it's definitely a harsh film, I think everybody agreed that it's a great movie. Certainly very thought-provoking. And for the first time, and I think we'll do this later, we hung out afterwards so people could just sort of digest and talk about the movie, which I thought was a fine plan, especially since I'm not allowed to drink beer at the happy hour anymore because it requires too much editing on George's part afterwards. So I could drink beers after.
Why are you airing our dirty laundry right here in front of all these fine people?
We're all friends.
You know what, though? I want to really say a big, big thank you to Siftus. Siftus, after the Fright Club Live, left just a really great message on the Columbus Horror Society Facebook page. Says it was absolutely amazing. He says, we were all a captive audience. No hitting pause when shit got extremely difficult. And it's funny that you gave out merit badges as beyond brief breaks for beer or bathroom. Every person filled the theater to the end. And he says, wonderful event, Fright Club. So thank you,
Thank
Siftus.
you so much.
That is awesome. Thank you. And we look forward to seeing you at future Fright Club Lives because, they're not all going to be as tough to sit through as Martyrs was. But every now and then, we like to give you a little gut punch.
Well, actually, this month is tough. It's not Martyrs tough, but it's a tough one.
Yeah, we like to give you a little gut check. What is it next month?
September 14th, we're going to watch Eden Lake.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Fassbender. It's a Jack O'Connell.
Yeah.
It's a great movie, but it is not for the squeamish. But it's also, if you made it through Martyrs, you can totally make it through Eden Lake.
Yeah, Eden Lake, no day at the beach, or day at the lake, but it's a goodie. Okay, Siftus, thank you so much for that. And so we give out the thanks for all the feedback because we got a lot.
We
got a lot.
We
for
did,
that.
and
was
it was
really
great.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Seen a lot of pictures of people taking their merit badges home and putting them on their refrigerators.
And we want to say hey to member of the Mad Wolf Pack, Matt Weiner, who came out and made it to his first Fright Club to see Martyrs, which I warned him, but he made it all the way through, so good for you.
Yeah, he just started writing some reviews for us on madwolf.com because we can't get to all of them. We try, but we can't get to all of them, and Matt is good, so check his reviews out on madwolf.com as well. And Matt, thank you for coming. All right, so we're getting into physical disabilities in horror. Now, right away, you've got a rule. You've got a rule at the top.
I do have a rule at the top. We are not covering mental illness in this podcast. It strikes me that we probably will in a future podcast.
Yeah, because
but it's just too cluttered, and I wanted to focus, for a particular reason, I wanted to focus on physical disabilities today.
Yeah, that's too big. That's its own podcast.
Absolutely.
For sure. Okay, that's totally understandable. No qualms with that.
Good news.
Yeah, and really, if you're a very regular listener and can remember back a full 2 weeks ago, you're better than we are. You might be saying to yourself, wait a minute, I thought it was Evil Steps this time, and you are correct, but you'll find
we were
out.
sitting through a movie not too long ago and says to ourselves, I think disabilities in horror is going to be a better topic this week.
Yeah, and you might be able to guess. You've been paying attention to the multiplex lately. It's a good reason that we decided to flip to physical disabilities in horror. So that's what we're doing. So we're going to start out with one. I really like this one.
I know you do.
In fact, this is one half of a feature, and I like this half better. Part of the Grindhouse double feature. This is Planet Terror.
They're not dead.
The hell are the bodies?
They're gone.
They're not stopping.
What the hell is going on?
Infection will spread all over the world.
You want the story? I'll spin it for you quick.
We got a face full of DC too. Where the laws of science are broken. The side effect is terror.
Now, the last hope for humanity rests in the hands of a few.
I have no leg!
I made you something. Stand.
Robert Rodriguez, Planet Terror, a Grindhouse feature.
Yeah, this was paired with, when it first came out as a double feature, paired with Death Proof.
Yeah,
the one with
Tarantino's.
The one with Kurt Russell driving the car, which was okay. I just didn't like it as well as this. I thought this was a lot of fun, and of course, the physical disability that we're talking about, and of course, the physical disability that we're talking about is Rose McGowan and that super cool machine gun leg.
I got to say, that was so awesome. I had the shirt. You got me the shirt with just Rose McGowan and that machine gun leg right on the front. Oh, my God, it was so awesome. And I didn't even realize until recently that you got a little thing for Rose McGowan. I had no idea.
She was hot in this movie. I'll tell you what. She couldn't qualify for sexy villains because she's not really a villain.
No, she's a hero.
Yeah, but she's got it going on in this movie with that leg. And by the way, they pulled that off by they put a cast on her leg to keep it stiff, and then wrapping green first aid tape around it, like a green screen. That's how they did it. Then they filled it in, much like they did with Gary Sinise in Forrest Gump. A
far inferior film.
Yes, I agree with that. We've gotten into that with people before. Forrest Gump doesn't age well, but we digress. Planet Terror was cool. It's got this virus, I guess you'd call it, this virus spreading and turning people into horrific monsters.
Well, it's right. It's some kind of a chemical weapon from a military unit, and then they show up, and Tarantino is one of the actors, which is never a good idea. We all know it. He must know it.
Yeah.
But your beloved Bruce Willis is in it, and Josh Brolin, of course, is a crazy bad doctor, and it just takes a lot of weird turns. It's got a fun, campy quality. It's gross.
It is gross.
It's super gross, but I love a lot of things about it, but one of the things I do love is that she's not victimized. She's not a victim, and she loses her leg, and it's hardly the end of the world. In fact, it turns out to be to everybody's advantage, and I just think that's kind of awesome about this film.
Yeah, and you talk about Bruce Willis being in it. The fact that he was in it itself is another one of the odes to the old grindhouse filmmakers, because they used to do that a lot. They would contract a big-name movie star to appear in their grindhouse movie for like a day or half a day, and just for a few frontal shots only. Then the rest of the scenes were done with a double film from the back. So, and then they would take a picture of that big star and they would place it prominently on the movie's poster,
of course,
in order to boost sales. So it's kind of a nod to that. I mean, they used Bruce Willis more than that in this movie, but you can see why they do that. And Tarantino and Rodriguez are great about that. I mean, very authentic homages.
Oh, yeah. Clearly, they love grindhouse. I mean, Tarantino is very well known for loving and showing in his theater grindhouse films. He loves them. And I do too. And so the whole experience, especially when it came out with those trailers, was so fun. It was so fun. And then, of course, it spun off a couple of, like, Hobo with a Shotgun, which I love.
Yeah.
Machete
was so good.
It was just
sucked,
a ton of fun.
But, Machete was so good. And I remember when we first saw it, we were just giddy, not only with the two movies, but with the trailers.
Yeah. Don't.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Werewolves, Women of the SS.
Oh, my God. It's the best thing Rob Zombie's ever done.
It is. And one of the best things Nicolas Cage has ever done.
Yeah.
But, it was just so much fun. And I admit I was really disappointed and surprised that it bombed.
Yeah.
Yeah, really disappointed. I know it's a double feature and it was long and everything. But, he was hot at the time, Tarantino.
Of course.
And, man, I thought it was a heck of a lot of fun, even though Death Proof I don't think was quite as much fun as this. But really liked Planet Terror and really liked the physical disability, although I don't know how much of a disability it was.
Yeah, it turned into quite advantageous, actually.
And it was very reminiscent of the great shot in Machete where he comes flying over top with the motorcycle and shooting the gun at the same time. Because when she gets pulled, she sits on the motorcycle.
On the back of the motorcycle,
yeah. Well, and then her boyfriend keeps saying, no, the other way. No, the other way. Man, here we go. Now we're ready. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun, and it is number 5 on our list of physical disabilities in horror. Rose McGowan.
There are a couple of others I want to mention in this area, which is basically, women who use their disabilities sort of to their advantage, and one of those is teeth.
Ooh.
Yeah, teeth.
Ooh. Ouch.
We probably don't need to say more than that. If you're not familiar with the movie, look it up.
You can explain a little bit.
Okay.
Where the teeth are.
What is it called? The vagina dentura?
Dentata.
Dentata. So there you
Something
go.
like
I think
that, yeah.
it tells you enough.
Yeah, that's about it.
So
And I'm not familiar with the other one.
Ms. 45. It is not one of my favorite films, to be honest with you. And it's a young woman. She's deaf mute. She's raped a couple of times. Kind of loses her mind. Dresses like a nun. Kills a bunch of people. But it follows the theme that we have here, which is basically that, horror films aren't always good to people with disabilities, but honestly, in many cases, they're better to them than other genres of films are. And so these are just a couple of instances where doesn't keep them down. That's all I'm saying.
All right. So there's a couple in the same vein of our number 5 movie, Planet Terror. Moving up to number 4, one we've talked about a bunch, and we've mentioned that this was our actual first movie date from 1990, Misery.
Guess it was kind of a miracle you finding me.
In a way, I was following you, seeing as how I'm your #1 fan and all. I've read everything of yours.
Well, you're very kind.
I noticed in your case there's a new Paul Sheldon book.
You want to read it?
You'll never realize what a rare treat you've given me. You dirty bird. Misery Chastain cannot be dead.
Misery Spirit is still alive.
You murdered her! I know you've been out of your room.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Is this what you're looking for?
Whatever you're thinking about doing, please don't do it.
James Caan and Kathy Bates in her Academy Award-winning role.
God's sake.
It's for the best.
Hey, please!
God, I love you.
Misery.
This one is so good. And if you remember when we had NACMAC, Dr. Neil McRoberts, on for the Stephen King episode.
Sort of senior Stephen King correspondent.
Right. This was one he liked.
Yeah.
And with good reason. It's really well done. And, the disability, the hobbling.
Right. Well, he's not doing well before the hobbling. That's why he's in there in the first place.
That's
but
true.
yeah, the hobbling kind of takes care of it.
Yeah, that's true. He, James Caan, suffers the
Car accident.
car crash.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a famous writer. And then Annie Wilkes, played by Kathy Bates, finds him. And she's a #1 fan of his Misery books. And nurses him back to health until she finds out that he's going to kill off Misery. And that doesn't sit well with her at all. So forces him to write something else. And finally, I think years later, a lot of people hinted at it, guessed at it early on. But I think Stephen King finally admitted that, yes, this is about his struggle with substance abuse. That's the heart of this.
Interesting. But, usually when we talk about this film, we talk about Kathy Bates' Oscar-winning performance. She's perfect. She's
good.
Perfect.
So good.
And, but James Caan... James Caan's a badass. He just is. And the whole time he's in that bed, no matter how calm he is when he's talking, you think to yourself, it's James Caan. He's going to kick some ass at some point, or he's going to hobble toward kicking some ass at some point. He's going to flail at some ass at some point. And, I think that his performance, it's so intentionally leveled, and it just makes a nice counterpart to hers, which is not what it seems and just goes berserk periodically. And the two of them play off each other so well.
And I think he's really good, especially in the hobbling scene, because as he's quietly, more intensely as it goes along, begging her not to do it once he realizes what she's going to do.
Yeah.
It's a very good contrast because she's also calm. It's just like, no, very matter of fact, this is what we have to do.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a really nice counterpoint. And actually, William Goldman, a pretty famous author, he wrote a book, four screenplays, and he talked about James Caan's role. Paul Sheldon was offered to, get this, William Hurt, Kevin Kline, Michael Douglas, Harrison Ford, Dustin Hoffman, De Niro, Pacino, Richard Dreyfuss, Gene Hackman, Robert Redford, and Warren Beatty all turned him down.
Wow. Wow. And it's probably because you spend the whole movie in bed.
Well, not only that, but I think it was Warren Beatty specifically who mentioned the hobbling scene. And early on, remember, in the book, she doesn't just hobble.
No, she
cuts off the foot.
Right.
And I think it was Warren Beatty specifically who said, well, then he's after that he's a loser. He's lost, and didn't like that part of the screenplay. But of course, that is a point of contention for a few people of this movie, and we talked about it with Dr. Neal that they changed it from the scene from the way the book had it to just the hobbling, and I think it works.
I do. I mean, I'm offended that he said, if you lose your foot, you're that's.
Well, that's I guess the legend has
right?
it. Yes, I mean we that's supposedly what he said and how he reacted.
But I think they're not being a big burst of blood. They're not being. I mean, the fact that the film is really bloodless and yet so terrifying, and so and also I think, I don't know, for some, when you see something like that, sever and blood, it feels horror movie to you. You know what I mean? There's almost a relief that goes with it. That hobbling was like nothing we'd seen, and it was so brilliantly executed. And it's the most memorable scene in the movie. So obviously, I would say they did it right.
Yeah, and William Goldman, who I talked about, he adapted the screenplay, and he was very much opposed to that change. In fact, he has said that scene was one of the reasons he wanted to adapt the script, and he was opposed to the change. But Rob Reiner, the director, I guess had final say. So it's not only a bone of contention with audience members, but with filmmakers as well. But you'll find people that would like it the other way. But I think we're both in agreement that it works.
As I recall, Dr. Neal also agreed with us.
Well,
and
then we win.
He's the trump card.
That's
because
right.
He's getting his PhD in Stephen King. That's not really accurate. That's not really accurate. But he's a big Stephen King fan, and he's super smart. So
That's
we
right.
think that his vote counts for more than the rest of you.
And it does. So Misery and number 4 in our list of physical disabilities in horror. Number 3. Now, this is the reason, as you might have guessed, that we went with this category this week, because it's just out in theaters, I think, today as we record this. And it's great. It's called Don't Breathe.
Yo, I got our ticket out of here. Rumor is this guy is sitting on at least $300K. Boom! That's our guy.
Wait, is he blind?
We messed up to rob a blind guy, isn't it?
Just because he's blind don't mean he's insane, bro.
Who's there?
Stay right there.
How many of you are there?
Just me, man, all right? Just let me go, please.
Okay, I swear to God.
We're trapped in here.
There has to be a way out of here.
Now you're gonna see what I see.
Love it!
Yeah, so much fun.
We saw this trailer, I don't know how many months ago, and so rarely does a film live up to its trailer, because we saw it, and also Fede Alvarez, right, who did the reboot of Evil Dead 2 years ago, so we just thought, yes, please. Like, that's yes, please. And I snuck into a screening I wasn't supposed to be at, and saw it about a month ago, 3 weeks ago or so, and was so pleased with it. I was so pleased with it that I went back last week to watch it with you.
Yeah, you couldn't really talk about it because I hadn't seen it yet. And there are some twists.
Yeah, so we're not going to tell you about any of those.
Definitely some twists, but it's so much fun. It's one of those where you see it and think, why hasn't this been done before? Because it's an update, a rewrite, a reimagining of the old premise of Wait Until Dark, the old Audrey Hepburn, Alan Arkin movie where the robbers break in and she's blind, and that caused a lot of tension. But this one is an outright horror movie. I mean, there's some violence. There's not a lot of blood, but there's some violence, and some bad things happen because these 3 kids, basically, call them kids.
I think so, yeah. Young 20-something, I would think.
They break into this man's house. It's in a really pretty much abandoned section of Detroit, and legend has it, they've been told that he's sitting on about $300,000 or so from a big legal settlement, and they think it's easy pickings once they get in there.
Because?
He's blind. And it's not easy pickings at all. He not only has a backstory, he's got some secrets in that house, and they are in for a bad time.
Yeah, and he's a veteran, so he's got some skills.
He does have
he's got some skills.
And he's played by Stephen Lang, who
always cuts an impressive figure.
He does. If you don't know him, he's the real muscled up, little bit older commander guy in Avatar, and most of these roles, he's still, like you said,
he's pretty jacked.
He cuts an impressive figure. That was my one nitpick about this movie, that he is jacked. He's wearing a wife beater, and
he's in bed when they get there.
Yeah, that's true. but there's no, we pretty much go all over this house, and there's no weights. There's no workout equipment. So he's doing a lot of push-ups, and that's okay. It worked for Herschel Walker. Nothing but push-ups. It could work for him. But no, he's very good, and they give him these contact lenses so that it really looks like his eyes,
Oh, yeah. He has a very affecting blank stare. I mean, it is so creepy.
Yeah, he does. So that's obviously the physical disability this time. But, he doesn't have a lot of disabilities. I mean, once things get rolling in the house, he handles himself pretty darn well.
And I think that I can't probably overstate how important the set design and cinematography and particularly sound design are for this film. The Fede Alvarez is so efficient with every single scene, every shot, every line. And, the cinematographer, you've got these long, winding tracking shots, but they're panicky. Like you would be kind of trapped in this house wandering around. And the sound, because that's the thing, right? He wakes up, he's in the house, they're trying to hide, they're trying not to make any noise at all. So the sound design picks up every tiny sound, and it's so impressive and so unnerving.
Well, and that's the ironic thing about it. And really a genius thing about it is because once things get really intense, it almost becomes a disability for the kids.
Yeah.
They have disabilities in the fact that any noise they make, that's the title, Don't Breathe, you always hear that when someone loses one sense, the other ones become a little bit more acute. And so they're at a disability because they can be smelled. They can, any little, like you said, any little movement they make, maybe a floorboard creaks, and it's going to be picked up on by this guy because he's going to notice things that other people don't. And then you have...
Especially inside his own house.
Yes, exactly.
And that's another thing I think they do really well is, they just show him he's wandering around, he's lifting a hand. He's just making sure he is where he thinks he is in this house. And he sort of sinks into a corner for a while because he knows that they can't see him because he's turned out the lights. And, of course, it doesn't matter because he can't see anything. It's a fairly... even-handed, low-key approach to a lot of things, even though what they do is just ratchet the tension to almost unbearable.
Yeah, and I really looked at it. It occurred to me that it was lights out for grown-ups.
That's what you said, yeah.
Lights Out just came out, and I think it made a fair amount of money.
It did.
They're already planning a sequel, but to me, it was very high school date kind of scares. Pretty, low on the scare meter, but this is high. And this one is, I thought, lights out for grown-ups. So we've talked a little bit about it, maybe more than we should. I don't think we've given anything away.
I don't think we have, no.
Go see it.
Yes, you will enjoy it. And you know what? It's fun to see with a crowd. It's really fun to see with a crowd.
It really is.
And I do want to mention a couple of other, because I have to think that blindness is something that there must be some kind of very primal fear about losing your sight. There are a lot of horror films that use it and can use it pretty effectively. And as you mentioned, Wait Until Dark, that's one of the greats. That's one of the greats. I don't know, it's a horror film. It's a tense film, but it's one of the greats. Hush, which you can watch on Netflix right now, is a bit more like this. It's kind of a cross, really, between this and Wait Until Dark. And I'm not going to say it's a masterpiece, but it's a good film. It's worth seeing. The Man Who Laughs, which we've mentioned many times. Now, it's a minor character who's blind, but they still use it pretty effectively, mostly to generate empathy, I think. And then another one, Julia's Eyes. It's a Spanish movie. I like it. I don't love it. It's maybe a little too Brian De Palma for me, but it's got some really good creepy stuff going on. So.
And another one I will give a vote for is a movie called Blindness. Not really
but horrific.
A horror movie, but
horrific.
It turns horrific. And that came out a few years ago. It's Julianne Moore, and it's Mark Ruffalo, and it's...
Gael Garcia Bernal.
Yes, and it's what happens where everyone, or most everyone, gets afflicted with blindness.
So it's basically kind of a zombie film, right? Except that instead of becoming zombies, they go blind.
Yeah, and then what it becomes is a bit of a Stanford prison experiment, because all the blind people are put in one section, and then social order starts breaking down, and things start happening as one group
a little bit Lord of the Flies-y.
Their dominance over another. And so that's worth checking out too. So Blindness was the name of that. And so that covers that physical disability. Number 3, Don't Breathe. It's out now. Go see it. Number 2, oh boy, this is one of our favorites. In fact, your very favorites. From 1974, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
This is the movie that is just as real, just as close, just as terrifying as being there. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. After you stop screaming, you'll start talking about it.
Oh, Franklin. Oh, Franklin, things aren't going to go well for you. And I think you knew that when you left home, because it's the 70s, and so there are not a lot of ramps where you're going. There's not, and those, your hot hippie friends, they're just going to go make out and leave you, and that's going to not go well for you.
Well, actually, it's not on a more of a subtext level. It's not just Franklin, because Tobe Hooper allowed Gunnar Hansen to really develop Leatherface as he saw fit under his supervision. And Hansen kind of decided that Leatherface was mentally handicapped.
Yeah.
I know we're not talking about mentally handicapped in this, but it kind of fits. And that Leatherface never learned how to talk properly. So he went to a school for the mentally challenged, watched how they moved, Gunnar Hansen did, and listened to them talk to get a feel for the characters. So we've not just Franklin.
Sure.
You've got the backstory of Leatherface as well.
Yeah, there are actually, physical disabilities, not being able to use your legs, wheelchairs in particular, they pop up in a lot of horror films. Actually, I bet we could probably name 10 where you just see an empty wheelchair.
Yeah.
Because I think people do find there's something scary, something...
Yeah. So vulnerable.
Yes, the vulnerability there, you know.
Yeah.
But the reason that I go with this one, besides the fact, of course, that I absolutely adore this movie, but what Tobe Hooper does, right, which is invert your expectations when it comes to Franklin, because prior to this, and it's, fairly early, it's 1974, we've got movies like... Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, or Wait Until Dark, or where the character with a physical disability, you're rooting for them, and in your heart it's going to go their way. I mean, all of the tension is built around their vulnerability, but that's one of the things that Hooper did so beautifully with this entire film, is just to subvert your expectations. There's no score. It's broad daylight, and the guy in the wheelchair gets it, and also he's so unlikable. He's the least likable person in the movie, and that includes Leatherface, right? He's just a whiny, awful person.
He really is.
And so you kind of, so anyway, one of the things I find fascinating is what Tobe Hooper did with an audience's expectations when they came into this.
Yeah. And that's something that we've talked about other filmmakers, particularly Wes Craven.
Yeah.
He did that in some of his early work. But yeah, that's a very good point. And the fact that Franklin is so unlikable goes back to something that Gunnar Hansen said about filming of the movie. He said that early on, or during most of the filming, he did not like the actor who played Franklin, a guy named Paul Partain. But then, a few years later, he caught up to Partain again and realized that he was just doing the method actor thing.
Oh.
And he was making everybody hate him by being that way that Franklin was. And he had simply chosen to stay in character even when not filming. And apparently the two then, Gunnar Hansen and Paul Partain, remained good friends until Partain passed away. Now, of course, since then, we've lost Gunnar Hansen as well. But, yeah, so that's he really... I bet he didn't get along with most anyone on the set if he stayed as Franklin the entire time.
I bet you're right. Just so whiny. Oh my God. Plus, I've only ever heard, and when you listen to the DVD commentary, it was a nightmare to film. It was hot. Hooper was kind of a fascist about everything. They kept doing these retakes. It was just miserable for everything. So if on top of all that, the one guy who is super whiny and annoying in the movie is super whiny and annoying in life, I'm sure that didn't go very well for anybody. Of the other ones, there are so many others we could have gone with wheelchairs, but I still think that, Silver Bullet, no. Oh, my God.
No. Well, to go back to your last point, actor who played the hitchhiker, Edwin Neal.
Yes, I love Edwin Neal.
He said filming some of those scenes, quote, was the worst time of my life, and I had been in Vietnam.
Wow.
So that's bad.
Yes.
That is number 2 on our physical disability list of horror movies. 1974 is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and number 1 really can only be number 1. And if you know the history, you probably have already guessed that we're going all the way back to 1932 for Todd Browning's freaks.
We didn't lie to you, folks. We told you we had living, breathing monstrosities.
Let them laugh. They're swine. They can't hurt me, but they hurt me.
They're going to make you one of them. My peacock. Their code is a law unto themselves. Offend one, and you offend them all.
This one infamous right from the get-go because it uses real people.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it more or less did in Browning's career. He was hot off Dracula, one of the biggest movies of all time at that point, and, was allowed to do basically anything he wanted, and this is what he wanted to do. And he had himself been in circus sideshows, worked with the circus, and so he felt very sort of comfortable there. And he actually made other films, Lon Chaney films, that kind of skirted this issue, but it was the fact that he used a cast of not only of dwarves, but also of other people of physical disabilities, and referred to them as freaks. Because the film refers to them as freaks, because at that point, that's how these people were living, as freaks. So he had actual conjoined twins. He had just, basically all but 2 or 3 of the main cast members have, in one way or another, major physical impairments.
Yeah, and he had to, Irving Thalberg was the head of the studio at the time, and he had to recut the picture immediately after the test screening, which was disastrous, but he could not cancel the world premiere that was already set for late January of 1932, and apparently that is the only venue, the Fox Theater in San Diego, where the original uncut version was known to have played. And it became a box office success, and crowds lined up around the block, and it broke the theater's house record and the whole bit. And by the end of the run, word had spread that Freaks was about to be recut. So then the theater started advertising, get in here before it's your last chance to see the original Freaks in its uncensored form, because it had such a reaction from that test screening that a lot of the studio heads started scrambling.
It's interesting. It was hard to get for a long time, and it was banned in a lot of countries for a long time. And it's an incredibly effective film. I love this movie, but I do think that there's a valid point that people have always made about it. So, early on people said he was exploiting these people, and then people said, no, he's not. He's presenting the reality as it is. He's giving these actors an opportunity to have lead roles, and, he empathizes with them because he grew up in that setting. But then I think the pendulum swung back and said, yeah, he grew up in that setting. He's very used to exploiting these people for money. He did exploit these people for money. So it goes back and forth. And I got to say, I think I have a foot in each camp. But, separately from all of those things, it's a really well-crafted, very creepy, certainly iconic film.
Yeah, and boy, all you have to do, to anybody that has seen it, all you have to do is start saying, one of us. But yeah, you're right about it being a foot in each camp, because according to the screenplay, the scene where Madame Tetralini introduces that landowner to the performers as they're out in the woods playing ran quite longer, and really cemented that point home as to see them as more than just circus freaks. And then in the extended scene, the man says, when I go to the circus, I'll remember, that he sees them. So I understand the points about it being offensive, I guess, of taking advantage of these people, but I can also see the other way too.
Yeah, but, so we were talking about that Renee Zellweger movie.
Oh, the new one. Same kind of different as me. If you've seen this trailer, it's just so bad. Talk about offensive.
Right.
I saw this in the theater the other night before I saw something, and I groaned out loud.
Right.
I just groaned. It's going to be so bad. But anyway.
Well, I've seen the version of the film that has the extended sort of pre-freak show, and it's got that, well, again, it's the early 30s, and so most scenes have some sort of a precious air about it, but it does have that sort of, this is so precious that it's melted the heart of a wealthy white man. It's got that about it. I don't know that it completely excuses anything. On the other hand, you can see that a real stab was being made toward humanizing. And actually, I think all of the performers come off as being quite human throughout the film, and the lead, you feel terribly for because he's fallen in love with this horrible woman. But you feel even worse for his... Well, it's the actual actor's sister, which that's another one of my other favorite things is how creepy is that? His love interest is indeed the actor's own sister, and you know that because they look exactly alike.
Yeah, and then she says that, but they hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
He says they can't hurt me, but she says, but they hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you feel for her.
Yes, you do. Yeah, she's sweet, she's sympathetic. And I love the performances, and then of course the big scene, the big comeuppance scene holds up today. It's very brutal, it's creepy, and so I think what makes me go back to I like the film camp is that you don't sympathize with the normals, quote, who are about to get their comeuppance, which means that even though you've got, this armless, legless man writhing with a knife in his mouth, he has power. They do not. I mean, I do feel like, I do. I feel as though you can't disregard it as being something that does validate the humanity and power of all of the performers on the cast.
That's a good point. That's Freaks from 1932. But what do you think? If you're on the other camp, let us know. Always reach us on Twitter. That's the easiest. We're at Mad Wolf, MADDWOLF. Also, Mad Wolf Columbus on Facebook, as well as the website, madwolf.com. And, of course, you can always get us on Golden Spiral Media, the fine folks that host this podcast. GoldenSpiralMedia.com. You can find us there as well. So, that is physical disabilities in horror. I imagine, as you said, one of these days we'll get to mental disabilities in horror. Lots of fertile ground there. But, we're looking forward to next week when we will get back on schedule, and we're going to do Evil Steps, and then we look forward to September 14th, the next edition of Fright Club Live at the Gateway Film Center in Columbus, Ohio. It's going to be Eden Lake. So, and a countdown of vacation horror.
Yes.
So a lot coming up.
And just one quick note. I don't want to hear about monkey shines. I think I've made my point so far about monkey shines. I don't care for the film.
Don't you monkey shine in here. Don't you monkey shine in here. All right. You heard her. Don't monkey shine. All right. So thank you so much again for all the great feedback last time. Look forward to your feedback this time for physical disabilities. And until next week, I'm George Wolf.
I'm Hope Madden.
And this is the Fright Club Podcast.
Stay frightful, my friends.